I broke down the essays. If I do 7 more per day, I'll be in time for Friday. So I think it can be done.
Are you on our class yet?
No, if I do 7 today, 7 tomorrow, 7 Thursday, I'll be good to go. So we'll see how that goes.
Are you on our class yet?
It's all.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah. That's the one thing. That's not the one thing. That's one of the things I like about Turnitin is it divides up the classes. So not that I don't think it should make a difference, but you don't get in a situation where I was grading 7th period, harsher than I was grading 9th period or something like that. So. All right. We have TWA question from AP exam. This is from 1997, so this is like an artifact, 20-year-old document, although it's like a copy that I made on September the 18th at 10:20 a.m., so not exactly 20 years old. But this was an AP question that was on one of the AP questions that was on the test 20 years ago. In the following passage, the contemporary social critic Neil Postman contrasts George Orwell's vision of the future, as expressed in the novel 1984, with that of Aldous Huxley in the novel Brave New World. Read the passage, considering Postman's assertion that Huxley's vision is more relevant today than is Orwell's, then using your own critical understanding of contemporary society as evidence, write a carefully argued essay that agrees or disagrees with Postman's assertion. What do you have to do? Lizzie? Argue. This is different than the main verb that you would have been using for all essays prior to this, and we're not writing this essay, we're just kind of talking about familiarizing ourselves with it. It was analyze. Now, you were still creating an argument in your Heart of Darkness TWA. You were still creating an argument in both Grapes of Wrath essays. Your argument was, this is what Steinbeck's trying to do. This is his whole point. But this is more of your own personal argument that you have with this prompt. It's not dependent upon what Steinbeck wrote, what Conrad wrote, what Huxley wrote, what Orwell wrote. And so a lot of folks refer to this question as the argument question.
We don't have to write on this?
Yeah, mark it up. Of course, it helps if I plug in my smartboard. And then I have to answer the phone.
Okay, right?
Hey, sorry. I didn't get anything from them, no. And did you ever hear anything from your book? I was wondering if, does he not know maybe? Do you think someone would have? Okay. Yeah. Those were the two big ones that when I was looking at it, I was thinking she said that she dropped it off in your office. So I don't know if I have the name. I know who it is. So I'm not too worried about it. Because I did see her in the hall yesterday and I asked her. So that's your fault. But no, those would have been the last two that I was like, So, okay. All right. Okay. All right, good deal. Thanks. Bye. Maybe. There we go. I don't call it an argument question, so still is an argument question. What I call it is, because we like acronyms, DRQ. Not to be confused with the DBQ for A-Push Euro World History, folks. Embrace the DBQ. Don't fight the DBQ. Embrace the DBQ. DRQ standing for 3 different things. Any ideas for an argument? It's argument-based, where DRQ would come from. If you agree with something, if you support it, you would be defend. If you are against it, you would refute. You would object as well. And the reason for the DRQ or using that is these tend to be the verbs traditionally that show up most often. Sometimes it will say agree or disagree like this one does. The Q one throws people off. Nope.
Qualify.
Qualify. Byron, was that you that said qualify?
Yes.
Do you know what that means from like argumentative standpoint?
It means explain and rationalize. And give examples.
Yeah, which you are going to do no matter what. Where sometimes people go, okay, I'm clearly, for something, I'm against it. Qualify means I'm in the middle, and it could go either way, which there is some truth to that, but not 100%. If you qualify, you still pick a side. But if you qualify, you acknowledge the merit to the other argument, to the other side. You could see that working, but this is just a little bit better.
So it sounds like it's a little bit harder to write.
You go into homecoming. Did you pick the dress? Kind of. What's that mean?
I don't know. I have ordered it. I don't know if it'll fit.
So if it does fit, everything's okay.
Yes.
Okay. Was this an easy decision?
No.
Oh, why not?
Because I couldn't find a dress I liked.
That's better than finding 5 dresses you like. So this one you do like.
Yes.
Okay. So once you found it, that was it.
I think.
Okay.
I hope.
We don't know. Think she's defending. What about shoes? Have you figured that out yet?
Shoes?
Yeah.
No.
Oh boy. This is
One
all.
step at a
Go with the
time,
high
Vicky.
heels people.
One step at a time.
Look at the shoes.
Last question. You went like short dress, not like gown. Okay.
I have that much.
Fall dance. I want to make sure you're not messing this up. Dress works. Then we get to the shoe step. Allie has 3 sets of shoes in front of her. All would work. Okay, so you don't have a problem with one shoe over the other, but there's one that just ends up being, that's a shoe. That's a qualification. You don't have a problem with the other options. You can see the benefit to the other options, but one just works out better than the other. So qualification, you still end up defending or you still end up refuting, and ultimately, again, it makes no difference which one you go with, but you kind of like acknowledge the benefits of both sides. It's almost like you are evaluating the pros and cons. If I go with this dress, I look pretty. I like the color. It costs too much. If I go with this dress, it's nice. It's on sale.
Ooh.
And no one else is going to wear it, so I think I'll go with that one. It's not that you dislike the other dress, it just wasn't the best option for this specific issue that you were taking a look at. So qualify what it is not is, it doesn't matter which side you pick, so go ahead and choose whatever side you want. There's still an argument, but you're just acknowledging the pluses and minuses kind of both sides to it. For now, I would probably stay away from qualifying because I think it's good just to kind of get used to making your argument before you kind of take this middle ground approach, which can get some people into trouble. So we are making an argument, as Lizzie was saying. What is our argument based upon?
Orwell's and Huxley's like ideals about the future.
Okay, so like their vision of the future necessarily.
Yeah.
Specifically, whose assertion do we have to agree or disagree with?
Neil Postman.
We have to agree or disagree with Neil Postman. Now, we know that Neil Postman ultimately agrees with Huxley or Orwell, based on the prompt. Haven't read the passage yet. Huxley, considering Postman's assertion that Huxley's vision is more relevant today than is Orwell's. Again, we don't know those visions. We'll have to take a look at it here within the passage here in a little bit. But you have to decide, do I agree with Neil Postman? And by agreeing with Neil Postman or disagreeing, that means I agree with Huxley or disagree with Huxley. What's my evidence?
Everyday events, they're common knowledge.
Contemporary society, everyday events is going to be my basis. This is a drastic change from rhetorical analysis. Rhetorical analysis, what's your evidence? The rhetoric, the text. So your evidence is not coming from the passage. The passage is here to give you understanding about what Postman believes in relation to Huxley and Orwell, but you are not using the passage as support, you're using contemporary society. And for contemporary society, we're assuming we mean 2017, not the 1997 that's at the top of the
prompt. So, that evidence would certainly change. A lot of people like the argument question because it tends to give you a lot of freedom as to how to set up your argument. A lot of people don't like the argument question because who's responsible for the argument and the evidence? You guys. And the problem with that can be that folks will make opinion, general statements that don't have specific evidence or support for it, or at least they don't identify that support, and then the argument falls flat. So it's not enough to go, I think, I feel, I believe, but you have to validate your actual reasoning. And that's not always easy to do dependent upon the prompt. I would say when you have something like this that says use contemporary society as evidence, that's a good scenario for you because you're familiar with contemporary society. It's not that you have to pull, your evidence from history or anything like that. Generally, the statement will be, you will get prompts like this that say contemporary society as evidence. A lot will mention, base your evidence upon your reading or your observations or understanding of history. And it gives you the option to pull from those things. There's not going to be something that says, use your support from the Grapes of Wrath, use your support from World War II, but they'll give you the freedom to kind of pull what you want. Contemporary society simply would mean, though, you do have to go with contemporary issues. You can't pull stuff that was happening in World War I, World War II, if you are a history aficionado. Any questions or concerns at this point? All right. What's the next step? Read the passage. So take a couple minutes, read the passage, figure out what is Huxley's vision, what's Orwell's vision, then we'll decide which is more relevant. As succinctly as you can state it, what's Orwell's vision? Or what's Orwell's concern? Okay, things that we dislike, things that we fear, things that we hate, that's going to ruin us. Huxley? Things that we love are going to ruin us. And certainly, usually at the end of a passage, you tend to get that overall summary. So in short is a pretty good transition or, hey, look at me phrase that's going to let you know that you're going to get a little summary of everything. The whole entire argument can pretty much get summed up with, in short, Orwell feared what we hate will ruin us, Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. Chances are, for most of us, we were kind of already identifying with Huxley a little bit just because you read the book Brave New World last year. Anyone read 1984? Orwell. Okay. So, you know, a couple people are familiar with it. The big picture is it doesn't really matter, because if you have not read Brave New World or you haven't read 1984, everything that you need to know about it still gets presented in here. Couple things to understand about the argument, the DRQ. And this would be true for any question. Number one, it's never testing your background knowledge of a specific text or book. There's not a master reading list that you need to be aware of. So if they need to give you information about 1984 Brave New World, they'll do so. The other thing is you are never getting assessed based on whether you agree or disagree. You are getting assessed or scored based on how well you explain your evidence, your argument as to why you agree or disagree. Do you agree or disagree with Huxley that what we love will ruin us compared to what we hate or fear? Anybody have any thoughts?
Agree. Well, I mean, I can explain why, but it was
Yeah, why?
because with the amount of like information and like technology that we're accumulating, there's a greater chance of us moving forward from that rather than like starting to restrict those capabilities.
Okay. So would you say technology is like the main reason then? Okay.
Like scientific advances.
And this is why you would agree what we love will ruin us. If it only stayed at this, what's my question or comment going to be in the margin of the paper as Grace is writing this paragraph? How? Why? Can you be more specific? So, taking that into consideration, what technological advances that we probably, in theory, like could ruin us? And again, we're using kind of contemporary society as a basis here.
Virtual reality.
Okay? How so?
They could just develop more and more into like more open world and more simulations that pretty soon people wouldn't want to leave
Why is that bad?
because you'll grow obese, you'll go fat. In place it just your personal life will wither while your virtual life will thrive.
So, health concerns, complacency, personal relationships go downhill. Okay. What else? Not having to be virtual reality, but technological advancements. What about them?
Well, same thing. There are also like health risks that like studies are showing can happen. We start losing sleep, and we stop talking to people in real life. So I guess that also goes on.
I yell at my mother-in-law because that's what I do. But when she can't sleep, like she'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, what does she then do? No. She knows better than that. She plays solitaire on her phone.
Oh my god.
Hey, solitaire is a
raising your
good
body
game,
back.
alright?
Why?
Why not?
Blue light, and like it's different than like just the whole different than reading. Like you're focusing your eyes on this bright light object, which is different from like reading and putting a little small reading lamp on or something like that.
It's solitaire though.
But you still have the whole blue light issue thing that would be taking place. So, I mean, you could take a look at, and there's health concerns, you know, so far as like possible links to cancer, which we're not going to know about for years. I get random emails, you know, from companies and things like that that you buy stuff from. I'm just going to put, you know, also health with that. I think it was LL Bean. It was like last Christmas, I got an email from, they were advertising underwear for men. What better email to start the day with? It was specially lined so that it would restrict radiation. And the whole idea is, where do you put your cell phone? In your pocket. so that if there is any concern about radiation coming from your cell phone, it would be blocked by my underwear.
Perfect.
I did not purchase them. I'm taking a risk.
Stupid.
We'll see what will happen. But there's certainly those concerns. The whole blue light, emitting, coming from the phone. Of course, now you have night mode with Apple software, and Android certainly has kind of similar things that would go along with that. I think you said communication with it as well. What was the whole purpose of cell phones when they were first kind of being created? To talk to people. On the list of things that people do with their cell phones, that I don't know if that cracks the top 10, necessarily, at least in the traditional verbal, kind of talking taking place. So, communication could be something that's kind of limited with it. What else about smartphones?
News.
What about it?
Can get news or what happens in the world.
Good or bad?
Both. I don't.
If we're going with the idea that we agree with Huxley, so and again, I mean, it's a benefit that comes from it. What is there anything that could be bad about getting news nonstop? Now you said fake news, being an issue with it. Jake, anything else in your mind since you brought it up?
Matters the type of person you are. You're kind of one of those people that needs to know everything, then it could be beneficial. But if you don't really care about anything that happens, it could also be bad.
If I'm reading my Catcher in the Rye book like I'm supposed to, and I keep getting alerts with my phone, dinging and buzzing, it could, take maybe my attention away from it. I think also with like alerts and communication, what do we kind of expect to be Apple, this probably happens more so with Apple, because in messages, what's the little blurb that you get after you send something? It says delivered, and then you can turn off the notification, but you can also go, Byron read it, why hasn't he responded to me yet? Come on, where are you? I need to know, now. That instant kind of gratification, which isn't just going to be with smartphones, but that whole idea that you need to respond to me. I've reached out to you. Come on, Justin, talk back. Can't wait 5 minutes. Now you need to know that instant gratification could be something.
You could also bring up the fact that social media has led into an increase in anxiety and depression.
Sure. And I mean, and social media, you could put that certainly under smartphones because of the apps or whatnot, or that could certainly kind of even end up being its own, concept in its own right that we could look at. Allie, was your hand up?
I was gonna say, along with the alerts, just Xbox and all that stuff, it education, it prevents people from not doing their homework and they sit and play and that's not very, and then they go to school the next day and they don't have their homework done.
Yeah, and when Kobe was saying virtual reality, video games would be going along the same lines, being just the phone itself. I think that overall dependency that would be placed upon it, if, what do math teachers complain about when it comes to technology? Calculators, and things like that, and other things. But, I give someone $5, the thing costs $3, and they can't figure out how much change to give me. They have to start putting it into their calculator. Power goes down, shop saves, all that kind of stuff. Good job. So, that erosion of maybe basic skills might take place because of the convenience factor. And again, why do we love technology? For the large part, because of the convenience, the wealth of information that, as Jake was saying, could be a positive thing, but there could certainly be negative effects to it.
So going all the way back up to technological advancements, could you say dependent on the technological advancements, because without the smartphones and
Yes,
so that's
and keep in mind that there's not this is the one way that you would have to respond to the question. But a possibility as an overall thesis statement would be humanity's dependency on technology validates Postman's assertion that Huxley's fear is more relevant. Handwriting is going down than Orwell's. And so what I could then do is everything I write about is going to be dependency on technology, why that ends up being bad for us. Now, I don't have to do this. If I set this up, and I have to be careful about this, I'm telling you then my whole argument is going to center around what concept? Grace's technological advancements. Now, I could have a body paragraph that is built solely on smartphones or virtual reality or social media. That's perfectly fine, but everything has to go back to technology. And we'll get into some non-technology topics here in a moment. If I wanted, I certainly could go, Postman's assertion that Huxley's fear is more relevant than Orwell's is absolutely correct, and then I could have a technology-based subtopic and then something else altogether. We just haven't gone outside of technology. And to be honest, technology is probably where a lot of people would go with this one if you were agreeing with Postman's assertion that Huxley's more relevant than Orwell. And this is not diminishing the ideas that you folks mentioned at all, because they're all very good. 600,000 people take this AP exam every year. If they had this question, what percentage of those 600,000 are going to write about technology? At least 50%. What number did you say?
95.
That might be a little high, but I would think you're looking at least 2/3 to 3/4. So you're talking about 450,000 people writing about technology. Why do you need to have details and evidence? Because you need to distinguish yourself. You need to separate yourself. So it's one thing to go, hey, we become dependent upon cell phones. It's another thing to go into, the lack of communication that's taking place because the erosion of the human language, where we're just writing a couple letters as opposed to full words, when texting, getting into specific apps, things like that, social media, where it can become dangerous. The more specific you are with your evidence, generally, the better that argument is going to be. And evidence is what creates arguments, and we're in the business of arguments. We're not in the business of opinions. Not that you can't have one, but it doesn't mean anything so far as you're trying to establish yourself. Any questions about that? Can you think of anything that we love that could ruin us outside of that realm of technology, just to see what other things would be?
Well, I think stuff that humans love tends to be bad for us.
I mean, you get, everything's
like
in
humans,
moderation.
But humans love laziness and they like good feelings. So like you can start talking about drugs or whatever. And so like if we do what pleases us, we generally won't succeed.
Sure. So it's not that, because if you took the other side, that what we fear or what we hate could ruin us, drugs, I think would certainly work for there. But you could be looking at the human emotion. What is that? What is the drug there to replace that is not otherwise there? Byron probably going to have to move from Mrs. Perry so she doesn't like run you over. But finding fulfillment in something to too far of an extent, could lead to a person's downfall. We like being happy. And so if you're not happy, people try to find happiness in some other method. Drugs, alcohol, a whole bunch of vices could get incorporated. Why did... There you go. Diet Dr. Pepper. That's like your favorite. So those could all be things. Food would certainly be one of those. I love food. Food loves me. We're a good relationship. So me going to Brewster's every day, is that a bad thing? No. Especially for chocolate, raspberry,
Truffle. I asked the teacher.
Life is good. But like addictions in themselves could end up being a topic, that you look at. Grace?
Oh, I asked the teacher one time what their favorite flavor for Brewster's was, and they said vanilla. I said, that's a terrible one.
No, I like vanilla. I mean, I'm a traditional.
Is that white
Vanilla's just
Yeah.
And this is how DRQ questions go sadly off topic should you start writing about ice cream, so be careful for the examples that you use.
Ice cream.
Can anyone see any arguments for Orwell's side?
No.
Orwell's side, what we fear will ruin us.
I mean, some people just have fear, they don't put themselves out, and they're just kind of like, they don't do anything that they're not comfortable with, so.
It's like paranoia, just living in fear. And they're two different things, but you know, you're never gonna find out if you can do something unless you try. Well, I don't want to try. What if I fail? Oh well. So yeah, that can certainly limit opportunities that would be out there for a person. What else? If you're in London, what's a big concern of yours based on contemporary society, recent events? You know, terrorism. If you're living in St. Louis, what's big news?
Police brutalities.
And racism usually kind of coming along, you know, with it. So does terrorism, does racism have the ability to divide a nation or divide, you know, global? Yeah, certainly it could. So it's not that Orwell's argument does not have merit. It's not that you can't use it. I do have a feeling, and Byron will get to you here in a moment, I think more people probably would go with Huxley's argument, but it doesn't matter which side. It's all about how you present your argument and how you go about
I
supporting
just
it.
think it would be really hard to do Orwell because if you look at like the things like terrorism and racism, they tend to like unite. Actually, I don't know why we look at 9/11 as one of the big uniting moments for a nation. Civil rights movement was a massive moment for our nation. It seems really hard.
I think a lot of it probably depends on the context of where you are, you know, in your own life and geographically where you are located at the time of answering the question. If you are in, you know, St. Louis, or if you were in Ferguson a couple of years ago taking a look at a prompt like this, I think those external factors probably have a greater impact than it does on mostly white middle-class suburbia that we are in North Hills. So that probably has a lot to do with it. The way the questions are, at least to be created, they've been pretty true with this, is not to give any one segment of the population, whether it be race, gender, you know, geographical location, advantage, benefit for answering it. I do think within here, most of us probably go Huxley. I think if you were maybe in some areas that were maybe a little bit more divided and things didn't seem to be going well, Orwell would be a little bit more. I could see a situation where someone who has read Orwell and the ideas of the things that he mentions, very political surveillance, political control. You know, if you were taking a look at maybe lack of privacy of an individual, is the government stepping on too many toes and things like that, you still have some major support that you could pull from. The one thing that should not concern anybody would be if you're looking at this prompt and going, I didn't read that. I didn't read that. What do I do? All the information I still need is coming from here. In some ways, you could be at a disadvantage if you had read both books, because what might be a natural inclination to use as support, evidence from the books. Evidence from the books does not fit into that contemporary society as evidence realm that you're supposed to pull from. But the DRQ question can be, you know, tricky sometimes depending upon what you're comfortable with. I think most of us would have agreement with Postman, with Huxley. I think most of us have enough information that we could talk about technological advancements and smartphones and social media and calculators and, you know, even just going the internet, you know, for maybe lack of overall knowledge and comprehension that we could certainly pull from and would be okay. There's probably going to be some DRQ questions along the way that you go, I never thought about that. And then within a short amount of time, you have to think of an argument, come up with rationale, evidence, support it. Friday, we'll talk about these more tomorrow, and not Friday, Thursday, you're going to see another sample. But I'll pull last year's exam so that you can kind of get an idea of what maybe a little bit more off.
I just wanted to know if we had enough time to look at I was thinking general, the fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
Like around international events, going off with like terrorism or basically like the general fear of like we have no idea what's going on. Therefore, we act out in fear and paranoia.
Yeah, if we don't understand it, if we can't relate it, then usually we try to push it away that no, this is a bad idea. You know, say neither parent has ever gone to college, they might not be in favor of you going to, you don't need to go. I didn't go. I was fine. What? No, you don't have to leave home. If it's something that, you know, you're not used to, yeah, it instills maybe not fear right away, but excuse me, at least concern, worry, doubt, and that can manifest itself very quickly into fear of unknown, no doubt about it. Again, it doesn't matter which side you go with; it's all with the evidence that you support. The more specific you are, probably the better the argument is. Think of it as doing rhetorical analysis. If you wrote about symbolism, but you don't include any examples, you don't have any evidence. You're doing the same thing with the DRQ. You just have to come up with the evidence on your own. You don't have a text to pull